Talking of which, tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming back Mr. John Hansen. Now, for those of you who attended, yeah, that's the way. That's what we like to hear. Now then, for those of you who attended, John gave a very interesting talk on UFOs back in February 2017 when we visited Broadhaven Community Hall. And it was, we were holding the 40th anniversary event of the Broadhaven school incidents. So if you were there, you'd have seen John there. If you hadn't met or heard John, I'm sure most of you will know that John is a veteran UFO investigator. And he's a researcher as well, and he's compiled a massive archive documenting UFO cases from all over Britain. Like myself and so many other people in the UFO world, John is a retired police officer. He was on CID, I think, and I was in the traffic department, so we were on opposing sides. Anyway, like me, his interest in the UFO phenomena didn't really start until he retired. He's been interviewed several times on radio shows, such as Coast to Coast Radio, and he even appeared on television on The One Show. I believe he's actually had his own UFO experiences in both Worcester and over Rendlesham Forest as well, which he may mention tonight, you never know. John produced the Haunted Skies series of books and collaborated with other researchers, notably the late Margaret Fry, I'm sure you all know about. In fact, he's also received acclaim from another UFO follower, none other than the late Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who stated that John's books were amongst his favourites. Yeah. So tonight he'll be talking about many cases he's documented. Oh, no.
Sorry, I haven't got the princes, but we'll talk about Prince Charles.
He's going to have a selection of masks he's going to put on every half an hour. Anyway, he's documented a lot of stuff, and he'll be looking at Margaret's work as well over the many years. The talk is entitled The Great British UFO Archive. So please give a warm, super welcome to Mr. John Hansen. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? No. Yes. No? Well, that's what I thought. Well, I don't know what happened to my pint. My drink was on the table, but it seems to have disappeared, so I don't know exactly that. You finished it. Moved the glass up. Sorry? You finished it. Oh, shut up with you. I never know where to start talking about this subject, because I've been involved in it for now 27 years. And obviously I've done a lot of talks before, and I tend to concentrate on the books. And the thing is, currently at the moment, books are not selling. And initially, let me start off and say that although I have masses of stuff to talk to you about, I find it easier to talk from the heart than go through all of this stuff. But we have a lot of images to show you. But first of all, I would like to thank Shirley. Shirley's my girlfriend. She's been helping me out with the archives. We have a tremendous number of archives, 260 of these. I'll try and lift it up without breaking my bloody arm, which covers some fantastic sightings. This is just 1995. This was a very old we have a huge number, as I say, of these, and it was always my intention or objective to put these together, and that's what we're doing. And I think I've left some flyers on the table giving you an idea of how the archives are looking, and we hope to get it open next year. Let me start perhaps from the beginning. A lot of people say to me, what triggered off your interest? And way back in 1995, I just sort of finished with the police, and I had, oh, thank you very much. Cheers. Is he always this generous? He is, yeah. So I finished as a cop, and one night before that, and an officer known to me told me that he'd been directed to the sighting of a UFO in the Birmingham area on the 19th of January 1995. And he and the policewoman saw this object, and you can see it very shortly. He sketched it for me, and that's what triggered off my interest, because prior to that, all those times I was on duty back in, let's say, I joined the force in '66. In 1967, there was the flying cross phenomena, and a number of police officers witnessed that, and on a day-to-day basis, members of the public also saw what they referred to or described as a flying cross. Unfortunately, even in those days, and to a great degree now, people that have got the courage to come forward and report things like that often get vilified by the media, and that is unfortunately how it goes. But anyway, this copper told me what he saw. He was with the policewoman, and that's what, as I say, triggered off my interest. And I thought, well, I'm going to write a book. So I started off with the Haunted Skies. I think the cover's in front of you there, and you'll see more when we get into the film show and screenshots and slides and God knows what. And that's what got my interest. And subsequently, I found it very difficult to get the books published. This was about 2008 or something. So I went to see Tim Good. He lived in London, went to see him, and he suggested I speak to his colleague that produces the books. And I spoke to him, and he said, well, look, if you give me 50 quid, I'll tell you how to do it. Well, really, these books have cost me a fortune. So I just got on with it and did 5 volumes, trekked backwards and forwards to Devon. And sometimes, well, these books cost me money. Sadly, of course, I've lost all the original books, because I shall not mention his name. It would be it would be inappropriate. But that gentleman didn't pay me any money for about 3 years. So I took him to court, and that taught me quite a bitter lesson, really. But then I brought out the Holt Perspective books, working with Colonel Holt from the States. I mean, has anybody been to, because it's as much as our meeting tonight as mine in a way, but has anybody been to Rendlesham Forest? No. Yeah. What did you think when you went there? Because this is...
For me, it's me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I took an amazing picture of at the alleged site, the landing site.
Now, is this where they've got the alleged? This is the flying saucer,
well,
isn't it?
This was before then. This was in 2008.
Yeah, I know where that is.
It's where the posts were.
That's right.
Yeah. And took an amazing picture which I came up with a really big orb in that location, orb of light, and also like a sort of a cross, a crucifix of light as well. You know,
right.
Like which has an amazing movement across the photograph. So that was weird in itself, and I took loads of photographs everywhere around, but it was the only one at that alleged site that actually had weird anomalies, you know, light phenomena. So it's quite strange.
Well, did you meet Brenda Butler?
I have at conferences, yeah. With Gary Hasseltine.
That's right, lovely lady. She's a personal friend. I've been around there many years. And what I like about a conference is we talk to each other. We interact. I mean, I could just, as I say, go through all of this lot here. But it's easy to interact with somebody because you pick up on it, and you've been there, I've been there many times, and as an ex-cop walking along the tracks, and people would come up to me and say, oh my God, the orbs, oh my God, have you seen those things coming on the forest floor? And I said, oh, I haven't seen them. And I thought, blimey, these people, they're getting mixed up with condensation or pollution or forest floor dust, orbs, blah, blah, blah. And then I actually saw another orb myself, left at Eastgate, and that was hovering off the floor. I took a photograph of it, and saw a lot of these strange orbs in the forest. And a guy called David Bryant, did you ever meet David Bryant? Well, David Bryant, he was, or he still is, a big friend of the astronauts, and he introduced me to Edgar Mitchell and some of the other guys up in Birmingham, and he wrote a book, he wrote a book about why he didn't think they went to the moon. And a lot of people would say, well, that's crap, because of course they went to the moon. But certainly, bearing in mind his association with these guys and these off-the-record conversations, which they said they had no objection to him publishing, it makes you wonder whether they did or they didn't. But he's had some sightings of what appear to be humanoid figures in the forest, which could be simulacra, that people could be getting confused. But for me, first of all, and we'll see the film, if you can remind me in a bit, Shirley, we'll stick the film on. 27th of December 2000, I was down in the forest with Brenda and some others, and this thing appeared above the horizon, then over the forest. And it's fascinating. I've never seen anything like it before, and somebody contacted the press. They came to see me, and I think they did some silly article about ETs, which is how it goes. But again, the determining factor are the stones. First of all, there was a lot of strange phenomena that took place in Washwood Heath, Birmingham, in the 70s. And it involved the police. What had happened is that people's houses, 3 houses, were being pelted by stones, smooth, round, polished pebbles, similar to what was happening in the forest, which is another story. But the one in Washwood Heath, the police kept they kept it under observation for 3 years and never found out why these stones were falling from the sky. They even had the army come in to to work out the trajectories, paint the stones, and that comes under the heading of apports. And if you go on the internet or you look at apports, these are stones that just fall from nowhere. Now in the forest, that happened quite regularly, and if you tell somebody about a stone that's fallen from the sky or whatever, people just laugh. People have even said that it's birds flying with a big stone in its beak and dropping down, which is rubbish, because I actually had some of those stones tested by a scientist, and the thing with the stones, if you like, the stones that fell, because we marked them, they looked normal stones, but they were completely clean. They were completely clean. You couldn't age them at all, which meant that somehow somebody had made a stone, and that sounds ridiculous, but those stones fell, and again the press weren't interested in that. But Rendlesham is a fascinating place. There's certainly a lot of strange things happening in there. Did somebody else say that they were there? Anybody? Yes, that gentleman there.
Me?
Come on then.
Well, me and Mike went there a few years ago.
Sorry?
Mike and I went there a few years ago.
Yeah.
We had a good walk around because we went on a UFO trail that the Forestry Commission have created with a leaflet.
Yeah.
But we were only there in the daytime, so we weren't there for long. But we had a good look around.
We walked around about dusk when they got back when it was just going dark.
Yes.
But what I thought was that bit of a creepy place.
Yeah.
You can't hear any wildlife. We only heard wildlife in the morning when we woke up, when there were birds up in the trees. But when we were there was no bird song or anything that, what they do at night. They just start tweeting and all that. Dead quiet. It really was quite a creepy place, I thought.
It certainly is. If you do get a chance, it's worth a visit, but it's changed over the years, and they've got this flying saucer they've made, which is really, it's not in the right place at all. I mean, I've been able to see Colonel Holt. He's been over here, and as I say, Colonel Holt's a fascinating guy. he ended up, after he left the RAF Woodbridge, he was deputy base commander there, he went to Washington DC, and he was in charge of all the armed services from a security point of view. So you're looking at a pretty clever guy that probably would have been a general if he hadn't got involved in the incident that happened in 1980. But yeah, it's a fascinating place. We've been down ourselves, haven't we, Shirley? Spoken to Brenda, and of course Brenda was the lady that wrote along with Jenny Randalls and Dot Street, the 1983 Sky Crash, which is well, there were things in it I didn't really, I find it very difficult to accept. But I always think when I talk to you, it's easy to try and talk at the top of my head and remember things than really go through all the paperwork. But we will be showing some images soon. But if I go back to, first of all, how many people knew Margaret? Margaret Fry? Yeah. I think you interviewed her, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Myself and Emily.
Well, the thing about, same with myself really. I mean, I've been introduced to you. You probably never heard of me before, because you see, I can't get any. Sure, I can't get any media attention because serious research does not endear you to the media. They don't like it. What they want to do is take the proverbial Mickey. We talked about the BBC One show. Well, I did one for them in the forest. They contacted me and they said, look, can we interview you? You can talk about Colonel Holt. So I did the interview down there, but before then I'd asked the producer, look, the thing with the Rendlesham Forest incident is that this happened over the end of December 1980. But hang on a minute, what happened in September, August, November 1980? I have the files on all of those reports, including an interesting one that happened in Hull, when an area was closed off by the military and all sorts of things happened. And that was one of the reasons why, in all probability again, a senior police officer went down from Hull, went to see Colonel Richard Spring at Woodbridge Air Base in January 1981. So, but the producer said no, director said, you can't use them. So that's fair enough then. And then at the 40th reunion of the Broadhaven County Primary School, when we were all down there, the BBC interviewed me, but then contacted me later and said we can't use it because somebody's complained that their face is on the film. So are you telling me in this modern technology age that you can't remove or blank somebody's face out on a film? So I don't know what to make of that, but that's how that happened. But say, going back to Margaret Fry from Abergele, Margaret lived in a place called Bexley Heath in Kent, and in 1955 she was taking her son to see the doctor because he had a bit of sunstroke, and this object landed in front of them, and she was a transformed woman. She researched extensively into UFOs down there, and then she moved to Abergele, Wales. We shall hear some of what she's got to say. In fact, Shirley, if you can read this from Margaret Fry. She joined Bufora, if you want to pass this round. I don't know if just pass this round. I'll just pass this round. I mean, it's a shame she never came here and talked to you when I passed that round, isn't it? No, she didn't come here, did she? No. No. Okay. This is Shirley's first time, so can you deal with the lean, please?
And it's a manuscript, so you're going to have to bear with it.
Right, okay. She was very nervous about meeting you tonight, but I said they're all right, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is what Margaret Fry had to say. when she joined Eufora, and if you want to just read that there.
I was working between 1962 and 1964 as a secretary for an engineering firm in Holborn, where I used to browse around second-hand bookshops during my lunch hour. One lunch break, my eye caught an illustration of a George Adamski typecraft on the book cover. The book by Larry Kettlecamp cost 10 shillings, which is 50 pence. More importantly, I asked the bookkeeper if he had any further such books, and he handed me The Flying Saucer Story by Brinsley Lepore Trench. That book somewhat changed my life and totally my outlook on life. I immediately set to and corresponded with the author. I had no idea he was an Earl, a member of the House of Lords, until some years later. Eventually, he wrote saying he thought I would make a good UFO investigator, and in 1967 he asked me to get in touch with the organisation he had founded, Contact International. In the late 1960s, this popular organisation had a couple of thousand members. I was requested to sit for an exam if I wished to become an investigator. I would, if I passed, be required to investigate sightings with an allotted experienced UFO investigator. I decided to contact my in-law, Frank Case, to give me all the information he could on prototype craft, a tall order for an aerodynamics designer and engineer with British Aerospace. Being a brainy and obliging fellow, he soon simplified down to my level various snippets of information until I felt qualified enough to sit for the exam. To my delight, I was duly told that hundreds of applications that year, 1970, I was one of only 11 selected in the whole of the British Isles. Feeling somewhat inflated, I naturally sat back and waited for the UFO reports to pour in. What a misconception. In the meantime, I looked forward immensely to the monthly Saturday meetings run by Eufora organisation, first at Claxton Hall, later shifting to Kensington High Street Library. The meetings at Kensington were stuffy, very southern English affairs at which lecturer after lecturer invariably told us their reasons for believing UFOs did not exist. During question time, if anyone dared to say they'd seen a UFO, they'd either be none too politely cried down or stared at in embarrassed disbelief by the packed audience. I wondered what the devil they all went there for. Interval times were tea and biscuits served with people milling around politely. When I tried to tell them I had seen these impossible, improbable UFOs, they'd politely move away. No doubt there were others there who had also seen UFOs, otherwise why would they have come? I was unfortunate enough not to bump into them, with the exception of Normal Oliver, the editor of Eufora Journal. Also Lionel Beer, one of the founder members who sold books and magazines, and I was not sure or did not think UFOs existed, but would share little jokes with them and save me the old numbers of FSR, Flying Saucer Review. So he should have, as I was possibly one of his best customers. Now my friend Alan Hilton jokes and says I have far more books than Lionel. However, these two gentlemen made the outing from the suburbs of Kent a pleasant evening for me. So I persevered with the meetings. I would not have otherwise, as it was a fair distance from Bexley Heath. Sometimes the Earl of Clancarty, Brinley Lepore Trench, would attend these meetings. We also had plenty to chat about. At the end of the evening, we'd make sure the taxi we got would take me on to Charing Cross Station after dropping him off at his home in Belgravia. He also paid the full fare. Brinley was a considerate gentleman. All this time I was immersed in a whole new world of ideas, opening up for me the subject of UFOs. From all this literature, some good, some bad, some indifferent, but I was learning. I think in 1971-72 I saw a UFO lecturer evening advertised in the hall above the co-op shop, Bexley Heath, Kent. I attended with a number of people. and by chance I sat next to a young woman, newspaper reporter from the Kentish Times. The talk was by a serious, earnest young man called Timothy Good, who later became my friend and one of Britain's best-selling authors of UFO books. I was asked if I knew him. No, I said. I am also a UFO investigator for Contact International, and I have also seen UFOs, hoping privately that she would not inquire how many UFOs reports I had investigated. To my surprise, she gave not only Tim Good, but also me a nice little write-up in the Kentish Times. The result was that I received my first phone call asking me to give a talk to the young conservatives. I explained honestly that all I knew I had read, apart from my 3 personal sightings. In addition, I am an out-and-out socialist. I was cordially invited anyway. So off I went with a fast-beating heart, which beat still faster when I discovered Mary Whitehouse had been their previous speaker. Everyone appeared to enjoy my evening and asked a lot of questions. I confessed to the chairman that I simply had not had any reports. Publicity, they said, that is what you need constantly. It is essential for politicians, so why not you? Get in touch with as many newspaper reporters as you can. In the years following, I took the advice of the young conservatives and used newspaper publicity, TV and radio as useful tools for obtaining UFO reports. Apart from this, as it happened from that time onwards, I was one of the fortunate few investigators who was always getting UFO reports, because apart from media publicity, I worked hard by constantly placing adverts in libraries, police stations, newsagents and shops. Unfortunately today, I would advise nobody, particularly women, to do this now, as we live in a more violent society. I was also brushing up my knowledge of the subject by constantly reading and giving talks to all sorts of groups and organisations all over the British Isles. Newspapers, particularly local ones, do from time to time give UFO researchers write-ups, but these can backfire as they tend to exaggerate, or sometimes are totally inaccurate. Newspaper editors seem to have no conscience about this, nor do they redress. One has to learn to be philosophical about this. It is not surprising, though, that some ufologists believe the press and media are controlled by secret government agencies. Perhaps they are, and they feel as restricted by these covert agencies as we sometimes are. Gordon Crichton, for many decades the editor of Flying Saucer Review, himself a former diplomat who excelled at languages and could read and write brilliantly in about 20 of them, since the 1950s, made us aware of these agencies in every country of the world. Gordon continued the editorship to the age of 91, to the time of his death on the 16th of July 2003. He was and is an enormous loss to ufology. More recently, Timothy Good, with his best-selling The Book Top Secret, Rick Redfern and others have documented this cover-up both in America and Britain. Most UFO researchers worldwide are aware of this, but the majority just do what they can by researching in their own countries of Britain. I personally do not have the money, time or stamina to travel from North Wales to the Records Office in Kew, London. What I have written about is my own experiences and the reports hundreds, if not thousands, of ordinary people in all walks of life have brought me both in southern England and North Wales. These reports went to Contact International UK and Oxford over the years. I now hope to share them with a wider audience of people. If I, investigating on my own in Kent, parts of South England and North Wales, have accumulated all this, what a wealth of information lies hidden with local researchers worldwide.
Yep.
problem that we face, what we both face, and I think the same with this group, is the sheer amount of UFO information, the sheer amount of letters. I mean, we will go through the screenshots and stuff in a bit, but it is difficult to comprehend how, with this amount of information, bearing in mind that we go back to 47, you know, the 1950s, Project Blue Book, Dr. Alan Hynek, the Project Blue Book files. If you look at the Project Blue Book files, you will find that there's always a card index, so the card tells you so-and-so saw a UFO, and they'll write it off as questionable. Could have been the moon, could have been a planet, could have been the Jupiter. If you look further below, you'll see a letter, you'll see a signed statement from the witness which clearly identifies the fact that this was no bloody moon or planet. And we're talking about thousands of sightings. We're talking about 47 now. 47, my God, how many years back is that? The 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the enormous waves in 1970, 1977, the Broadhaven County Primary School incident, and so many others all over the country. And then you've got the 80s, you've got the Belgium, sightings of the Belgium Triangle. But the thing is, I don't know if anybody's heard of the Belgium Triangle? No? Yeah. Well, in a nutshell, for me, triangles are composed of three objects, three lights forming a triangle. And you might think, well, that's triangular UFO, etc., etc. But for me, the number three, the triangular objects, the three objects forming a triangular position, are so many sightings of those objects over the Essex area. And it's an area which, back in the 40s, East Anglia was predominant with UFO sightings. The RAF were picking up on their radar these objects coming over in threes. Admittedly, sometimes they're not in threes, they're in fours or fives. I mean, I don't know, but so many sightings of stuff like that. And then we've got the 80s, and then we've got the 90s. I mean, that folder there, I talked about the police officer sighting on the 19th of January. Well, if somebody had said to me, do you know anything about any other sightings for that month? I would say, well, I don't know, but bloody hell, there's what, 6 or 7 inches of sightings there for the year, and probably, what, 20 for January. I mean, we've got 1996 folders, we've got 5 bloody folders that high of incidents, reported incidents, original sighting reports of objects that were seen and reported. And these aren't just lights in the sky. So with this amount of information, you wonder why the hell we can't move forward. Why can't we get the government to at least acknowledge, and in some way, I suppose they do because of declassified files from the MOD, but what we want to know is what are they and where do they come from? And we're not getting that, are we? I mean, has anybody here had a UFO sighting of a triangle? No? Wish I had my glasses on. No, nobody's had a sighting of a triangle?
Yeah, one.
Oh, yeah. Could you mind telling us, sir?
Yes.
It is a man, is it? I've got my glasses on.
Yes. It was in Swansea in the end of, I think it was end of 98, I think it was thereabouts.
Yeah.
Driving up towards, there's a slight gradient of a hill, and then it flattens off, and directly in front of me was a red light, and I thought the red light was the red light from a TV aerial on the top of the hill, you know, TV mast. But then all of a sudden I realised there were two, and it was quite odd. As I was getting closer, my eyes sort of refocused, and this thing was pretty much about 15 to 20 metres off the floor.
Right.
And it was about 90 to 100 metres away from me. I was driving towards it, but then the road kind of went along to the right slightly, so I was driving past it, and it was sitting there, and the back end of it basically spun round, if you like. So this red light went from up in the air to down onto towards the ground. I couldn't see the ground because it was like low-level trees at that point. And it was pretty much the same height as roadside lights. So there were 2 lights there, and this thing was pretty much in the middle, just off the road over some scrub land. And as I was driving past, I was barely moving as I was driving past it, as were hundreds of other cars, dozens of cars. It was of an evening in October. It was dark because it was like 6 o'clock, something like that. And we all pretty much came to a standstill, and this thing was alongside the road. And its back end went back up to like an upright position, and it just kind of glided along past us, and then went off sort of down the road really, and then sort of gradually went up. It was no noise, no movement initially, apart from the thing at the back spinning round. I couldn't see lights underneath it, you know, the 3 lights underneath it, because of the street lights, because they were pretty much parallel to the same underside of it. But it was low, and to the point of arguably the back end of it was probably coming down to touch the ground. I would say it's probably quite that low, and this thing kind of glided off and past me, and then gone.
Anybody else have a UFO sighting? I mean, do you all believe in UFOs? Strange question. You're here because you're supporting the group, but you all believe because of what you've learned, what you've read about. Yeah. I mean, for me, the worrying part about this is, first of all, I've just finished the Police and UFOs book. I've decided to get them printed separately. Normally, my books have gone through Lightning Source Nielsen's, and they go onto Amazon. And I'd always felt that people want as much information as they can. So some of these books have been 800, 900, 1,000 pages in colour, and it's the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, because with the cost of printing, some of those books, I've ended up, believe it or not, I know this sounds bizarre, I've ended up having to pay extra money for people to buy a book, because the printing processes, because of colour, electricity increases. It's crazy. Somebody once said to me, well, why can't you buy Haunted Skies books in Bertram's or Smith's or Waterson's or whatever? And it's as simple as this. If you publish a book and and somebody goes to one of those companies and wants to buy it, you have to allow 60% discount. Well, 60% discount, that means that I actually don't make a penny, but actually run at a loss. Well, it's one thing to let people buy books, but God, I mean, I did the revised volume 1, revised volume 2, the revised volume 3, and revised volume 4, and the oddest thing about the revised volume, again, we'll have a look at it, we'll have a look through. The one that I did with the front cover from the 1977 Broadhaven County Primary School was the book that the Buckingham Palace would not accept. They just do not. It was sent recorded delivery. I mean, in all of the books that I've had before, they've gone to Prince Philip. And of course, Prince Philip's been interested in UFOs. I mean, for God's sake, why shouldn't he be interested? David Cameron had the books and he was interested. I don't think anybody in power privately will accept that UFOs exist, because the evidence is undeniable. But why is it that it's still such an embarrassing thing to most people? If I talk to somebody and say, look, they say, what do you do? What do you actually do? And if I say I write books on UFOs, they think I'm a nutcase. So, you know, if you look at Facebook and you read all of these reports, you might gain the impression that we're getting somewhere, but as I said to the lads earlier, we aren't getting anywhere, but rather than give in, give up, we've got to go forward, we've got to keep on, because you know, so many people I've met over the years have suffered, not only physically, but also psychologically. And I often wonder if a sighting of a UFO, dependent on the distance or how close to you are, will determine what's going to happen to you. For argument's sake, a lot of people that get close to UFOs will have problems. For argument's sake, things will happen in the house, electrical appliances, mechanical appliances, shadows will be seen. These things can be quite dangerous. But for me, one of the most serious cases I've ever come across involves our friend from Wigmore. Yeah? Do you want to have a look at that Wigmore? This is Doris from Wigmore. Doris from Wigmore, Herefordshire, was on her way home on the 31st of December 1999 with her daughter Cheryl. And as they entered and got close to Wigmore, this thing appeared over their heads and followed their vehicle. Well, objects that follow vehicles, I won't use the word 10 a penny, but by God, out in the county, I've got so many reports from them. And on this occasion, when she got home, she had this huge blister on her chest. And she went to the doctors, she reported it to the police, she went on a radio station. And it was horrifying. And as she said to me, John, she said, you could put your fist in the hole in the chest. And it was patched up. She went to see the doctor, as I say, by the doctor, and they said they couldn't understand. They accepted that she'd had a sighting, but they treated it with a bit of suspicion, I suppose. But she's not the only lady and not the only guy. I've come across tons of people like this. So I think this is pretty serious stuff. This isn't just a few lights in the sky and laughing and giggling. And this is really worrying stuff. And the other thing with a lot of cases, for argument's sake, the case in 1954, a guy called Nigel Frapple, you can look him up on the internet. He was on the way home, been to a dance, and he saw this landed object in a field. And I went down and interviewed him years ago. He's from the Wiltshire area, and he didn't want any publicity. He told his brother, and his brother phoned up the BBC. So in those days, the BBC vans turned up with a big loudspeaker on the top, and they published an article on him. And he had two guys come to see him, and these two men said, look, if you don't keep your mouth shut, right, we'll shut it for you. So he did shut it. He shut it for many years. And then, this is not the only one. Another similar sighting took place in Suffolk, involving a guy called Mr. Frost and his wife. And they saw this triangular object come over. They reported it to the police, and they had a visit by two men who told him the same thing. So who are these guys? Where did they come from? I mean, we would also look at, in the latest police book, the one from Burmarsh, which Chris Rolfe from UFO Mech researched into. This was the Michael Howard's house. He was I think he was the Home Secretary back in Burmarsh. Was it 2000? Can't remember the date, but certainly 2007 or something. But that was a very interesting sighting. Now you might say, okay, we research sightings, we interview the witnesses, but again, as with the Mansfield UFO crash, I'm trying to keep my thoughts together here, a similar chain of events happened where they were threatened and intimidated. And the one at Burmarsh, that was sort of, as Chris has told me, you know, you might find you've got a trouble with your phone. and you get the BT or GPO as it was in there, they'll look at the phone and they'll say there's nothing wrong with the phone, but then you'll get them in again and they'll say there's something happening here, and at the end of the day that their phones have been tapped. Now, who taps these phones? Who gets authorization? And again, they were threatened. So, you know, make no mistakes about this. This is a pretty disturbing and frightening situation which has gone on for many years. And for me, publicising it is what we should be doing, because who are these people? Why are they? How can they do things like this? But of course, they do. I mean, we will see shortly an alleged implant, and that was. Now this sounds crazy, but what it is was a lady called, she's still living, Elaine Waite from Southall in London, and she had some sightings when she was a child of UFOs above the house, and subsequently in 1995 she felt something come out of her. You can all hear me, can't you? Because I'm not using this. Can you? Not using this bloody. Hello, I'm still there. Yeah. This thing came out of her nose, and she wrapped it in a piece of tissue, and we actually had that examined at Manchester University. And Professor Lorimer said it was made of hydrocarbon. It was the strangest thing he'd ever seen in his life, and we will see it soon. And she actually had a lot of attention by the MOD, who followed her around. Now I know that because well, let me say, I know they followed her around. But I suppose if you talk to the likes of Nick Pope, a very nice man, he would probably say the MOD didn't investigate or get involved in incidents like that. But I do know that they did. They followed her. And she represented intimidation. But a lot of letters were tampered with. Now, again, Timothy Good, Philip Mantle, others, including Graham Birdsall, their letters were tampered with. So why would people tamper with letters anyway, when they could just open them up, have a look inside and reseal them? But it's like getting a message across. And so many people that I've spoken to have had similar problems. So the thing with Elaine Waite is that she had a lot of trouble with letters going missing from the house, and bogus post office workers that would come into the house. So she even wrote to, I'm remembering all this from my mind instead of the papers, she even wrote to Baroness Gardner about it, and to Baroness Trixie Gardner, and this was discussed, and she was complaining about a phone being tapped, and then she had a letter back to say from Baroness Gardner to say that we can't confirm or deny that your phone was attacked, but that is up to the government, isn't it? So yeah, well, why did she attract that sort of attention? What, because she saw a UFO, or I don't understand, but it is it happens all the time, particularly where such as the Mansfield crash, even the Rendlesham case, and then the Burmarsh case, and other incidents, including even police officers from Manchester who sighted the UFO, even photographed it. I think we've got the photograph here, and were then told by two men, keep your gob shut up, or something will happen. So who are these people? So why do they go to these lengths? I don't understand, because we all need to know what these things are and where they come from. But I'll just look at my watch and see how we're doing, Charles. It's oh my God, it's 5 to 9. I was told that you're having a break at 9 o'clock or something.
Right, good.
9:10.
Oh, 9:10, right. And it's drinks all around, is it? Not. Okay. So, in a way, I apologise to you for the way that I'm presenting this, but I don't want to read all the stuff because I think it's different for Shirley because it's important. Oh, Shirley,
What?
the report.
Which one?
Doris. Have you got it?
Mrs. Smith's neighbour, I've got.
Mrs. Smith's neighbour. That's not Doris, is it?
No.
I'll put it out for you, Doris.
What are you doing with Doris? She's gone off with the alien.
Okay, I mean, we've got lots of... Margaret Fry, bless her cotton socks, a lovely lady. She had a fantastic sighting in 1955, and... I don't know where you can pick that up. But to say, she returned to the scene of the sighting in Bexley Heath, I think it was 2007, and I went down with her. And basically, she was trying to contact the children that have seen this object, because what had happened, she was on the way, as I said before, with Dr. Fukata to get some medicine for her son, and they saw this saucer-shaped object. After the break, I promise you, we will crack on with getting these illustrations and bits of films and things. She saw this hovering above the road, a few feet off the road, and it was a classic, what we would call an Adamski shaped object. And years ago I thought George Adamski stuff was all fake, but now people have described the Adamski type craft with the three, going back to number 3 again, the 3 globes set in the base of the craft in a hemispherical position forming a triangle. Yeah, I mean, that's weird, but that's what Margaret saw. And she, as I say, she reported it, and subsequently when we went down there, we'd already traced a copper called Jim Street, who's passed away. And Jim was a lovely guy, and he said he was on duty in the police station, and these people came in and they complained about a UFO that had been seen in the streets, and he said to his sergeant, the flying saucer UFO, and the sergeant said, look, for God's sake, PC Street. He said, are you mad? He said, these things don't exist. But Jim decided to go and have a look. So he went up to the location and he saw these men, very officious men with clipboards making notes. And he thought, oh, this is right above my pay grade, so he didn't get involved. Then we traced another guy, Rodney Maynard, who was on duty the day before, not copper, sorry, he was doing some work on a local culvert, and he saw what appears to be an identical object hovering just above the ground. And he then found out a few days later he was covered in these blotches and marks and certainly felt very ill. And then a copper came to see him and he said, look, I'll give you some advice, Rodney, keep your gob shut, don't say anything about it. Well, Rodney didn't. And then we'd found some other witnesses, including some children at Beaton Wells School, who'd all seen it with the staff and pupils, shades of Broadhaven County Primary School, this thing hovering, and it's not dissimilar, it was hovering over the school. So we've got evidence from them, plenty of evidence, and I think it was the local news shopper actually published an article about it. And there you've got this, the Margaret, who's suffering from breast cancer, was down there sticking letters through doors of households, trying to find children from 1955 who could, who could corroborate what she'd seen. And I think, people like that is what it's all about. She had a passion, she had dedication, she was very much involved with the Berwyn Mountain case with Scott Felton. And really, one of the reasons why I write these books and why I keep catalogues of these people is their endeavours should be honoured, because without them, what have we got? We haven't got a lot at all. But she, as I say, she was a lovely lady. She had quite a few strange sightings. But I look back, as you do when you think of people and incidents, and one of them was when she was at Bexley Heath, when we went down there for sort of a reunion as such. We stayed at the Crook Lodge Hotel, and I think about 1 o'clock in the morning, there wasn't a toilet in the room, so I thought I need to go onto the landing. So I got out of bed. I went to the toilet on the landing, and the door was slightly ajar, no light. So I pushed open the door and put my hand to get the switch, and I felt a whack and a scream, and she was sat on the toilet, and she hit my bloody hand as hard as she shouldn't get out. So I said, "It's me, Margaret." She said, "Well, bugger off." Well, why would a lady sit in the darkness on the toilet? But I remember things like that, as you do. And as I say, she was a lovely lady. And another thing she said, and I know I'm sounding boring, and you'll see it on the picture. She said, "John, why have you used that photo of me?" She said, because and you can see from the photo that one of her breasts had dropped because she'd had a mastectomy. I didn't know. I took a photo of her, and she said, "John, I don't mind using that photo, but let people know." And I thought, what a lovely lady. You know, she's an asset to our business and what we believe in. So it was lovely to meet her. And she died about 6 or 7 months ago. And myself and Scott Felton went to the funeral. And sadly, she left the English stuff to me and the Welsh stuff to Scott, but sadly it had already gone. So I won't mention who had it, but it's that's how it is. So that's that lady there. But yeah, going back to say Prince Philip, my ex-father-in-law served on HMS Kelly. Under Lord Louis Mountbatten. Of course, Lord Louis Mountbatten was interested in UFOs because I do have information on some of the ex-shipmates that then left the Navy and went into the civvies, of course, and they were involved with him. And it's pretty clear that he why not? I understand that he had UFO files and reports while he was aboard ship, and that's, as I say, Lord Louis Mountbatten. And then we have Prince Philip, who was very much interested in it. But even I think the newspapers gave one little mention about Prince Philip and his interest in reading the Haunted Skies books. But I don't know what happened with the revised volume. You'll see the cover, and you'll see we'll be able to look at some of the stuff in it. I don't know why the palace, the guy, his secretary, Prince Philip's secretary, was a guy called Brigadier Archie Miller Bakewell, very posh. The only photo I could find of him was at Prince Philip's funeral, which was out the paper. As I say, I had letters from him thanking me for the books, but when I sent the Broadhaven, if you like, the Broadhaven book celebrating the Queen's Jubilee, nothing. And I sent 2 more letters and another book. I got nothing. So I think it's because there was a picture of an alien on the front cover, but that wasn't drawn by me. That was one of the kids at Broadhaven County Primary School that drew it. So you would think, but I suppose they have that right as a royal family. They have the right to just ignore you, just fail to answer your letters. But I was pretty peed off actually, because I'd gone to a lot of trouble to research into that, and it's certainly a fascinating book. Again, with the Wiltshire book, I spent a lot of years in Wiltshire interviewing people, keeping by the side of the road. I tell many funny stories about that. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And it is, and it was. In fact, we've got to go down to the Henge bookshop in Avebury because of COVID. The book was published in 2016, so we couldn't get a book signing. But all I can do is take a book down there and then tell people to try and buy it because it is the best book you could ever get. I mean, the Shuttlewood family, so many others we interviewed and tracked people down. But not one of the newspapers was interested. Nobody's interested in the books that I do. So it must tell you something that perhaps it represents a threat, or I don't know, because they're well researched. I poured as much as I can into them, but not the sort of books that they particularly like. I don't know. The Wiltshire book is a good one, isn't it? Have you read it?
I've
No.
not read it.
You haven't read it either? No. Hell.
I'd expect a free one.
You expect a free one? Oh God, yeah. But I've enjoyed it. You know, for me, it's meeting people, and it's meeting. I won't use the guys and gals things, but it's meeting you tonight, and it's such a pleasure to come here and talk. And you know, if we got all day, we could. Okay then, everybody. Did anybody ever meet Omar Fowler? Anybody know of him? He's a researcher from Surrey, Gap, many years ago, and then he came up to Derbyshire. Sorry? Okay, right, okay then. Start again. Can you see the picture? Yeah, you can. This is Mr. Omar Fowler, but what we're going to do is crack on because there's a lot to do. He was originally with a group called Gap from Surrey. And in fact, one of the incidents he was involved in, and bearing in mind we're talking from a memory, not from any of the books and stuff, one of the incidents there involved, I think it was a Caravel airliner with an actress, a British actress, who was on the plane with a number of other people when a UFO was seen about 5 miles away. Subsequently, of course, the airliner just dropped down into a field of sheep and blew to pieces, and everybody on board the airliner was killed. I actually managed to trace some of the police cadets that were asked to go and help in the clear-up, and what they saw, of course, altered their lives forever. And I know that Omar had put in, there was a newspaper article asking if any other witnesses could come forward, but this was a typical saucer-shaped object, and it was seen a few miles away from where the plane crashed, and they were never able to discover the source or how this incident had happened. But I certainly don't believe that UFOs deliberately, if you like, deliberately single out aircraft, but sometimes if a UFO gets close to an aircraft, some quite frightening things could happen. So that's Omar. I met him again at Gordon Creighton's funeral. Gordon Creighton was the editor of Flying Saucer Review. Went to see him down in Rickmansworth, Hertfordshire, many years ago. Had one folder with me. He was sufficiently impressed to make me a consultant for FSR. And what a lovely guy. I think we mentioned that when he was 91 years of age, he was involved in a car accident. He was still in a hospital ward, and he was still doing Flying Saucer Review with the FSR, and I think there were some copies going there. That's a very professionally run organisation with most of the people involved were consultants for scientific bodies and very professional men. So bizarrely, probably 10 years ago, Gordon's son asked me if I would be the editor of Flying Saucer Review, but I had too much work to do. I just couldn't find the time, so I had to decline. Philip, that was his son's name, was Philip. But going back to, going back to the funeral, Omar was there and a number of other people. Sadly, Omar passed away himself 4 or 5 years ago. And again, all I can say is that the funeral, there was no wake. There was nothing after the funeral, which indicates, obviously, bearing in mind the conversations I'd had with Omar many years ago, he didn't get on with his wife, and but I rather feel that he was abused mentally, and I'm only saying by what he told me. And of course he passed away. I had a couple of friends who went to the funeral and there was no wake. So in a way, I'm sorry, Omar, that I wasn't able to get there. So have a sip of that, have a sip to celebrate his passing, please, Shirley. Get it down your neck, right? Okay, so, but that's Omar. That's his dog. And he absolutely adored the dog. So I always said that when I got a chance I'd show the dog. And that was, I think that was the magazine, he certainly produced OVNI magazine. And with Omar, when he was in, he worked the Derbyshire patch. The amount of flying triangles that were seen moving over Derbyshire is fantastic. And you can imagine a setting, can't you? If you were out there driving or walking, and suddenly out of the sky appeared this huge flying triangle as it slowly moved. We're talking about 30 to 40 miles an hour, if that, as it slowly moved majestically overhead, causing one to think, what the hell is that? And it's almost as if, as I say, almost as if the thing just doesn't give a damn whether human beings see it or not. And there was lots of those sightings over the Derbyshire area. So going back to, this actually was seen in the Manchester area in 1996. And I think I skimmed through this was the pilot's sighting. So I'm going back. By the way, that's the illustrations from Omar that he drew, and I've also got some film clips somewhere. That's Popey. Right, that's the pilot. That's the pilot from Manchester in 1996, and that is the illustration that was released from the, as I say, from the Public Records Office, declassified. Why did they declassify? I mean, why did they keep that? I don't know. It's strange because it was published in the newspaper. So we'll shoot forward, and as I say, that is very similar to what the police officers saw in Birmingham in 1995, the year before. And I think that this again was January 1996. And these are the sort of things that were seen in 1996. The lady in that picture, Linda Jones, if my memory serves me right, Didsbury, Manchester, out with the kids, saw this thing hovering over there, and I've spoken to her many times, and her husband Trevor, over the years, and that was seen over the West Midlands area. Again, that was 95. That was the picture taken by the two coppers over Manchester, I think over Old Trafford. And those two coppers had a visit, by the way, to tell them to keep the gob shut. Right, that's a police officer. I can't tell you his name. If he looks like me, well, who knows? It's not me. But he's to do with the 1995 sighting. Now, I wrote to the British Astronomical Association at that time because I thought there was a mundane explanation for these things. And this bloody idiot here sent this in the post to me, just like this, and you can read the council discussed this matter and the concern of Mr. Miles on October 28th. We have instructed him to ignore all future requests for information from crackpot organisations. He is flooded with them. Signed, Mobley, President. The matter is closed. How bloody rude. This lady. They were researchers from the Birmingham area. Again, her name escapes me at the moment. It will come to me. Alison, I think, but she certainly supplied me with some fascinating reports about UFOs in that area. And yeah, I think that was taken, God Almighty, when I was 50. And don't tell the audience how old I am now, will you? 90. What do you mean 90? 50. That was my 50th. And sadly, Marilyn Aldworth, that was her name. Marilyn committed suicide, jumped onto a railway line in front of her train. So it's, you know, that's it's a cutting. That's Admiral Lord Hill Norton. I wrote to Admiral Lord Hill Norton. He told me off for not addressing him in the right rank, and then said, why bother me anymore? Contact Tim Good, he's the authority. And then I ended up, when he passed, I spoke to his son. His son is probably about 77 now. And he had got a grandson called Simon. Simon was really helpful. He was very interested. And I thought, well, maybe Simon might do a forward for one of the books, you know, the Lord Hill Norton's grandson. But then suddenly, bang, no contact. Just they switched off from me. That's as I say, Lord Louis Mountbatten. That's the gentleman, would be one in the middle, obviously, that's Ted West, that's Mac's father-in-law, who saw with Lord Louis. And he went to the palace and got a medal for, he actually shot a Stuka down in 1941 as the destroyer was sinking. And he obviously passed years ago, but I said to him, well, why have you got specimen written on it? And he said, because I couldn't afford. I told the photographer I could not afford to buy that. And the photographer said, look, you know, the least I can do is give you that. So he gave him the specimen photo. And that's, again, that's Lord Louis in the middle. The lady, I think it's to the, would it be the left on there, Shirley? The lady left, or right, the lady left, that was his wife. And obviously I knew his well, she was my ex-mother-in-law donkeys years ago. And then that's Ted to the right, is that okay, Shirley? To the right, is it? That guy there, yeah. Right, so there's if you like, there's the royal. Now this is the UFOs get the royal seal. You obviously can't read it, can you? No. Well, okay, well, apparently he was very interested in, Charles was very interested in UFOs. And funny enough, there's a cutting here, Close Encounter, Princess RAF base, and this was in 2009, when Nick Pope is featured on it, and UFOs have been seen by pilots and police and tracked on radar. Now, why on earth would they, I know about this particular case, why would they put bloody alien in the middle, flying triangle, and Nick Pope at the bottom, and then take the mickey? So that's how it goes. And of course, on the subject, another lady that I met, she gave me some very interesting information, was Betty Driver off Coronation Street fame. She had some fascinating incidents. And now, when I contacted the press, you see, if I contact the media, the press, I have one or two contacts. Unless it's bizarre, unless it's crazy, or sensational, or taking a mickey out of researchers, that they won't touch it. Which of course doesn't do my confidence it doesn't inspire confidence, but my attitude is bugger it. If I can raise awareness, if I can show that these UFOs are dangerous, and I can show that most of these bloody idiots that write this stuff haven't got a clue what they're talking about, that is all I can do. But with the Betty case, that was, again, she told me about somebody that, as I say, saw a UFO and was threatened. But here we have Betty phone home, Corrie legend, met UFOs, beam me up hot potty. Well, you know, next to some young lady, as I've been pointed out, next to, I suppose years ago, it would be a topless model in the Sun, but 2019. But in other words, denigrating the subject. So the next one, that's interesting. That was Cosmology Newslink. They sent a letter. I'll read the letter. If I can. A letter from Buckingham Palace. Right, the above. Oh, I'll show it. The above honour in this jubilee year of your reign, my amateur publication wishes to produce a silver jubilee issue. I can only do so by making your Royal Highnesses and your husband where your beliefs lie in regard to matters not of this world but others. Therefore, to ask both of you a direct question of the followings: do you consider it a possibility that is your opinion early that there are other life forms in spaces other than our own? Please note that I have never written to a royal person before. It would therefore be the first time I could get the views of yourselves on these matters, since I have not read of many such views held privately by yourself or His Royal Highness Prince Philip, spelled with 2 L's, is that right? If you both hold any beliefs, I would like to know what they are, and if these would have to be private or for publication. I am sure, however, that all persons on earth, whatever their status, must hold some beliefs of this nature. It's just that we don't know for sure if you have them. Can you tell me if you do? I'm sure your reply will be very interesting if you feel this, of course, warrants such a reply. I wish to thank you for your time in reading this and feel sure that I shall not be sending any more requests at least for the next 25 years. God bless you all at Buckingham Palace. Long may you look after us all. Yours sincerely, Edward Harris, editor. Buckingham Palace replied on the 11th of July 77, Dear Mr. Harris, I'm commanded to thank you for your letter of the 5th of July asking for an opinion from the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh about other life forms in space. I fear that it is not possible to do as you asked. Yours sincerely, Heseltine. So that's not Gary Heseltine. That'll be, I think it was Lord Heseltine, I think. Right, so that's okay. That's one of the earliest the articles. A bit younger there, Shirley.
Yeah,
Just a little. But even in 1995, you can see that. Look at some of the images on there, and the object to the at the bottom. That's what was seen by the police officers. Oh my God, that's another old one of mine. So before I actually published any books, I never had a problem getting any of this in the papers. Never. As soon as I published the books, bang, stopped. And that's our friend Brigadier Millerbakle. He's sixth from the left, wearing medals. So I think again, that's in there, Shirley. So how does it look on the screen? Is that in there? Yeah, that's in there. Yeah. Right. So let's crack on. That's the one that the palace got they got a bit worked up about. So that's the. That's some covers of the early books. That's one that wasn't used. And unfortunately, as I pointed out, all of these, that's one that was going to be used for volume 675 to 77 to cover the Welsh wave, but that wasn't good enough. And there is the actual cover of the 75 to 77, and we've got our friend Betty Driver, aka Betty Turner, Coronation Street, on the back of the book. And that seems to have upset them. Excuse me. That's another one we didn't use. That's Dot Street. Anybody ever heard of Dot Street? Yeah, lovely lady. And that's Brenda, and that's Chuck, Charles Holt at the bottom. There's one, did I do that? I can't remember if, I can't remember, oh we did that one, volume 8, yeah. That was fascinating. As you can see, there's a photo showing the stone, some of the stones that appeared. That's another one we didn't use. That's one we did use, volume 9, volume 8, volume 10, and that was, what's that show? It's volume 11, yeah. And that was the Wiltshire book, and you went on to the Warminster area. Now that is the Kevin Goodman, who lived in the Warminster area, and he's written 1 or 2 books. Charming gentleman, that's his car. He recently passed away. I think he'd had a stroke, but and that's him with Dot Street. That's Kevin in all his glory with Dot Street. Nice photo. I think he'd probably be cursing me now. That's him again. I think you know Steve Wells, don't you? Yeah. Steve came up and did a talk. Yeah. That's Steve with Dot. That was at the conference. That was at the 2016 conference that I went to. Peter Paget, has he been here?
You've got a video only on. Did an online video with him on Skype.
Right, yeah. I don't think Peter likes cops. He can speak to me. Yeah, we won't go into that. Yeah, and that's Malcolm Robinson. What a smashing bloke he is. He's a nice guy. That's an illustration. That's in Warminster Flying Saucers. That's Matt Lyons. Matt Lyons was head of Bufora. What a smashing bloke. And as soon as he crashed out of Bufora and went to be a druid, never heard from him since. Just disappeared on the face of the earth. So that's Steve, and that's the Arthur Shuttlewood's granddaughters there. I want to disguise 50 years of the Warminster thing. That's again, that's Kevin, because and that's the award that was presented to Dot Street, and that's what I got. It looked still, never mind. That's more of them. That's Peter Paget on the right, and of course Malcolm Roberts. Sorry?
Ross Hemsworth from the back.
Oh yeah. Right, don't do that. Right, that was I think they presented a cheque. So that's Brenda Butler on the left, Dot Street on the right, and this is taken inside this Dot. That's Steve Meara and his wife. That's Kevin.
He's here in 2 months, David.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh right. Well, he's a good lad, and that's. And now you obviously know which one's Kevin. It's him again. That's Kevin when he came to my house many years ago, and that's when he went to see Philip Mantle, and Philip gave him that picture. That was the Haunted Skies. For me, the Haunted Skies revised volume 1 is because it covers so many sightings from RAF servicemen from the Second World War, and it was a pleasure to really speak to them and interview them. And that was the old cover for police in the haunted skies. This, I think that was about 2008. That the police car and the object above it, the orange object. What happened there was a guy from Canley Police Station, Coventry, a dog handler, was on his way. He was on patrol near the airport, and he saw this thing it was just in front of him, over in the police car. And he tried to give chase, and it shot off over the airport. He rang the airport up, and they said that it had been seen. And I interviewed the bloke, and the next morning this huge crop circle was found on the side of the road, and this is where we all make mistakes. Well, he didn't want to be named, so he was identified as DG, but I can't, as I say, can't find, I don't know who it was, I've tried, but that was a very genuine sighting. And but that was being superseded. That is the cover of the Police in the Haunted Skies, Volume 1, and that is a fantastic book because it covers so many sightings by police officers, and that's me by the police helicopter. And I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to arrange that, but it was the co-author of the book, Inspector Roy Teague. He managed to get the bloody helicopter to land, turned it round to the right position, didn't he? And took photographs, and that's Shirley. And that's, as I say, you can see the inspector with this hand on his, I don't know what a machine gun it is, but ready to fire. So that's some of the books. Obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 have gone. That was Gordon Creighton, the funeral, and there's a letter from Gordon. That's Gordon and his wife Eve. Well, Eve was a lovely lady. She used to do a lot for the magazine, and sadly, that's him again. That's Gordon. That's Norman Oliver. Norman Oliver has just passed. He had a lot to do with before. And I spoke to Norman quite a bit. Well, let's get that right. There's a lot, I don't know, we could well have got to the blinking end of that one. So let's, is that, no, why is that then? What's that now then, Shirley?
You were rotating it rather than going.
Sorry?
You was rotating rather than going forward. You had the
wrong button. Yeah, you were on the wrong button, you were.
Oh, pressing the wrong bloody button, was I? Okay, it's difficult to set over this thing in the mouth.
You were on number 94.
Yeah, hang on a minute, okay, got it by the Shirley. Can't really see it right. That's all right, got it. Well, that is, that was to say, that lady there, Eileen Buckle, wrote the Scorriton mystery with Norman Oliver about this Arthur Bryant guy. She passed away, and that was the Dennis Plunkett from the British Flying Saucer Bureau, a really nice guy. I don't know what happened to all this stuff. I think it might have gone to Sweden, but and that's him as a young man. He had a sighting at an RAF base. Interesting. So, but why does that happen then?
You're on the wrong button.
Well, because I'm in the wrong bloody button. What it is, folks, actually, I should have... No, I'm not going to. Come on. I haven't got me... I'm all right for short distance, but I haven't got my glasses on. So really, I can't see anybody out there. So, no, I can't. They're not my glasses, are they? They're off. No. That is Margaret Westwood. She was a police officer, and she worked at Cardiff City Docks. And she and her husband Jeff ran the Birmingham group Ufosis, and she had an amazing sighting over that was her husband Jeff, and that's one of the flyers. I don't know why is that taking so long to load. No, that's right. That's part of the archives, but that's going back to Margaret and Jeff. They live next to a place called Harborne Golf Course in Birmingham. And over the course of a week, people were reporting all these UFOs shooting and moving over the skies. And she managed to recover some metal. That was the sort of things they were seeing. And it was, the MO denied, they said they were seeing planets. Now, all the Margaret stuff went to before denying any knowledge of having received any of it. So if you look at those just scant details, and all the witness statements were disappeared, well, I don't know how that happened with before, but it's a shame. But she's passed away. That was another guy that worked for them. He found some metal following a UFO sighting over a place in Birmingham. That's her dogs that frightened me to bloody death. They've probably passed away now. But sorry, I think we might have to begin it. Now that is the best meal that's ever been cooked for me in my life, isn't it, Shirley? Shirley cooked that, and it actually makes me feel quite hungry. I think we've gone back. Yeah, that was so. We'll click on to the next one. Sorry. I think we'll just show some pictures of the archive. That was the early days. So you see there isn't much there as such. That was the old folders. We got rid of all of them, didn't we? We changed all that, but that's as you can see the various UFO magazines and folders. There's the royal couple. I'd like to think that they might come along and open it next year, but I don't think so. I can't see that happening, can you? No, that's all right. So we've got another chap that I contacted was, anybody ever heard of Trevor James Constable?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to...
Sky critters.
Yeah, give a bit of credence to his theories, really. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? But he very much he believed that things were sky critters. Very clever man as well. And that was one of the books he endorsed, and that was... I don't know how you make these bigger. Yeah, to see. It makes you think, that's is it all gone energy, wasn't it? He felt that you could produce this stuff and pick it up through these tubes, and that's the sort of things he was seeing. I mean, is that what UFOs are about? Right, that's the Yorkshire UFO Society Conference 85. Philip Mantle on the right, Graham Birdsall, and I think Mark Birdsall, yeah, of course, yeah, interesting. I don't know half these people. Yorkshire UFO Society, yeah, Philip Mantle. Right, these people. And I think Phil sent me these pictures. Right, there's Mr. Bird. Did you meet Graham?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never met him. I used to have some conversations with him, but...
Amazing guy.
Sorry?
Amazing guy.
Amazing guy, yeah, well, it was, he wrote all those magazines. That was the Sky Watching Caravel, I think, and that's UFOS. Really good magazines, the UFOS. UFO magazine, the Rendlesham Files, and that was Margaret Webb. Margaret Webb is a researcher, or was a researcher, from the Worcestershire area, and she used to run a group called Sky Scan, and she often told me, as other members of the group did, that they had to keep removing their files from the various houses because of break-ins and files being stolen from the houses. Now, what was all that about? But yeah, that was Margaret to the left. Of course, they've all gone now. Some of them are still alive, but that was Margaret, and that was with, I can't think of that guy.
The American guy.
Yeah.
But is that the bloke? Not a UFO, is
Yeah,
it?
the doctor, the series.
Yeah, the UFO series, yeah. Yeah, and then that was the Jerry Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's Margaret. If I can, I looked for the story. I've got it. Margaret on the left, obviously, and her daughter. And that's her dowsing. Margaret told me of an incident in Wales, with all the details, but they stayed at a guest house, she and her daughter, for the night, and there were other people in there, and she said she had some real trouble going to sleep, and then these apparitions appeared in the room, and she saw all these daggers and knives being thrown about. It terrified her, and she shouted, and the landlady came up and said something like, well, don't worry, because other people have seen this. And Margaret recited a prayer, and it ceased. And other people apparently had witnessed the same phenomenon. She identified the house, and that's the sort of thing she got that illustration done. And that's the story. So again, that's her, and that's her at her funeral. And that for me is she painted these pictures. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it's just it's very artistic, indeed. That's of course that's what's his name?
Bud Hopkins.
Yeah, Bud Hopkins. Because I met Bud in 2016 at the Truro conference, and Bud was a really nice guy, and he complained to me at lunchtime because he said, I didn't speak much to him. I think Nick Pope was there, and Nick Pope was talking about police and UFOs, funny enough, saying that to the audience that if a UFO appears, the police will be informed, and they will put this ribbon around the area saying, police line, do not cross, and then the public won't be allowed to go and have a look and see what's happening. Right, alrighty. But that's what Nick was talking about, and then Nick did a runner. I'm not sure if it's with Gary Heseltine. Maybe when you see Gary, you'll ask him. But but Bud said to me, he said, I'm sick of it. He said, I've come over here, and he said, people, they just want to sit on my lap. They just want to, he said, I've been trying to eat me lunch for an hour. But magic guy, and that's him signing his book. I think that's Phil, and is that an old Bud Hopkins? There he is again. That was one of my lady friends from donkeys ago, Dawn Holloway. She met him. There he is again. And I think that was one of his alleged abductees. I think it's Carol, somebody. Missing Time is a book that he wrote. Missing Time, keeps swapping. There's Stanton Friedman in the middle. Philip Mantle on the right, and Graham Birdsall. And that's David Boyle. If you want to. Okay. That's David. Have you heard of David Boyle? Anybody?
Blackpool exhibition.
It was a TARDIS, wasn't it? In Blackpool. Yeah, I met him at Clacton when he gave a talk, and you couldn't get a bloody word in. You couldn't get a word in, honestly. Just shut up. And afterwards, had a cup of tea with Clacton UFO group. And you just couldn't get a word in. And what had happened during the talk, he said something like, well, all bloody coppers are bent. So I said, I'll refute that allegation, Dave. And he said, well, shut up and sit down. So that did all was told. But he actually went to Rendlesham Forest, and I was surprised at how he seemed to attract what, for want of a better word, we'll call light phenomenon. Got to get a crack on now a bit. That's him down at Clacton. That's the sort of thing that he was picking up on. Really weird stuff. These are photos from the forest. Some of the strange things. We've got a lot more. That's a UFO that was seen over Clacton. Ron West, I've got the details who took the photo. Ex-Coast Guard sighting UFO over hospital. That is Ron West, that's his, he's an official investigator there. And that's Brenda Butler to the left and Ron to the right, because they sort of ran the group together. That's Ron West on the Skywatch. God knows how many years that is. There he is again. And that's the sort of some of the stuff out of Ron West's books, the illustrations by members of the public during the late 1980s and 1990s of stuff they saw over Suffolk. That's the truth. That one was interesting. That one there, that was a guy called Peter Topham, a schoolboy, and his sister saw these things above the farmhouse in Suffolk. And the next morning these marks were left, export support UFO plane, and that was what, I'm pretty sure that's what Peter Topham and his sister saw. So, and that's Peter. And that's Peter again. That's another photo of the area. That in fact is when Ron West passed away. This was made up for him, and I'm lucky to have got Ron's stuff because it was all going to be burnt. So that's Dr. Alan Hynek in Warminster. That was, and that's Lionel Beer to the left, president of Bufora. In fact, he came over. Alan Hynek came over and invited people to a secret meeting in the London area. I still don't know what all that was about. But yeah, and that's Hynek at United Nations. There he is again in Wiltshire. That's a crop circle in Wiltshire. And that's a friend of mine on the right, who had a fantastic sighting in 1955. Bill Dillon is his name, and it was at Ramridge. And again, kids, this was really, all the kids saw this object moving over, and I managed to track down some more pupils and teachers that had seen it. And the object that was seen at Ramridge in 1957 is identical to an object that was seen in 1947 over Oregon by a team of scientists from a research centre. Were out fishing and they saw this object, and I think it was Bruce Maccabee that said, in his opinion, the sighting by the research scientist and the sighting by Bill Dillon was one of the most authentic incident sightings he'd ever witnessed. And Bill Dillon, who lives in Newquay, not in the best of health, also, I think that's Hynek, by the way, but he's done some lovely posters. That's, by the way, that's Brenda to the right, and that's Hynek. We shall get there soon. I think we've come to an end of the second one, yeah? Is that right, Cheryl? Did you have your drink? Okay. Right, look at number 3 now. Right, that's that was Ramridge School. That was the staff at the school in 57, I said. That was the school. That was the object they saw. It's illustrated there. That was the original one, and that's an illustration that was done by David Sankey, and it was nothing to do with the nearby Cardington airport. There's original stuff there. Right, that's Bill actually to the left. That's, I mean, he's what, in his late 70s now. That's Bill. That's at Truro. That's Bill, and they've never even been more serious about it. He said that was a cutting, going back in time. Funny enough, we saw a UFO, saves 5 policemen there. Still spellbound by boyhood UFO. Why put the bloody alien though next to it? You know, E.T.? Which reminds me of the one show where they interviewed me. It wasn't videoed as such, but I was on the one show, and then they ended it by showing friendly E.T. cycling around the moon. I think it was Keith Lemon took the proverbial P, as usual, out of UFOs, which reminds me, of course, we all know what Professor Brian Cox said about UFOs. Does anybody know? Sorry? Go on, you can say it.
Okay.
Well, does anybody know what Professor Brian Cox said when they asked him? It was at a BBC interview, and a lady came out the audience and said, "What do you think about UFOs, Professor Brian Cox?" He says, "A load of bollocks," and that's on record. You know, I even wrote to him and texted him, and God knows, twittered to him, and I said, "Why don't you come round and look at these files?" Nah, no way. So.
Well, you know when you were talking about the one show at the Broadhaven?
Yeah.
You were supposed to have a clip on. That wasn't done, but that same program then, Kurt Russell was sitting next to somebody, and he's the one, he mentioned then that he was the one that radioed the Phoenix lights into the tower because he was flying and he saw what he could see the front of him. He was coming into land.
Oh right, yeah.
And that's what came out of it not being on it, you know. They talked to Kurt Russell about it.
Yeah.
When he mentioned it, then there was a bit of surprise then. So
That's interesting. I mean, we're going to get up to that in a bit. Right, that's another witness we found. He was one of the school kids there, and he confirmed what had been seen. That's Bill. Again, I think we got. I don't know why we've suddenly. Oh, that's some of the illustrations that Bill has done. Very impressive stuff. Flying saucer Stratford on Avon, 1971. That is John Dennis Llewellyn, 63 Masons Road, Stratford on Avon. Sadly passed away many years ago. He was the local sort of UFO researcher there. That's his wife, Ruby, showing a picture of him. And there's a letter from him, I think, about stuff around there. That is 1960. That was where a UFO was seen, and it left marks. And that's John at the top left, and the farmer. They're sort of taping up the area, right? And I actually bought this lot off Ruby for, I paid £100. So, but it was worth it because, well, there was some interesting stuff there, and it's the least you could do, really. That's Peter Tate from Bristol, Artcliffe Lights, the only photo I've ever got of Peter. A gentleman, these are the lights, and that's the sort of things that they were seeing. I don't know who that is, my mind's going.
Robert Hanson, the right?
Busty Taylor.
Of course it is, yeah, Busty.
Rob Hulse.
The guy.
Oh, right, yeah, of course, yeah. Well, Busty and Pat Delgado and Maria Wheatley and Colin Andrews and so many others that I've met in the Wiltshire area, Silbury Hill, Wiltshire, Man Made Man pop group were on top of there, and this hexagonal thing floated down, landed on the side of the hill, and they saw what they described as alien life forms moving up the hill. And many years ago I interviewed them, and they were very genuine, and You know, when I first started out in this, if you'd have said to me, if as indeed happened actually, if I met someone and they said I saw a UFO, I'd believe them. If they said, look, we saw a UFO and it landed nearby, and you'll never guess we saw somewhat like alien beings coming out of it, I wouldn't have believed them. I mean, I don't know whether these alien beings are alien beings. But yeah, these are so genuine people. That's Reg Presley. I wish we could have played Love Is All Around, because he's such a smashing bloke, Reg. He really is. Right. That's Philip. Is that Reg? Is it on the left?
Yeah, Busty.
Yeah, and Busty. Taylor, yeah. I saw. That's Busty with what's her name from the Staffordshire UFO group, Irene Bott, is her name, and in the middle is Irene Okerson. Yeah, is it Irene Okerson? I know her, the lady from that had the sighting in '78 of a triangular-shaped object which hovered over while she was on the way home. That's something else that's in the game. That's outside the Barge Pub. Anybody know the Barge Pub? Yeah. So many. And that's Pat Delgado. Fascinating account when he was at Woomera. He's a technician there about the stuff that was moving over and being tracked on radar, and they were all told to shut up and not tell anybody about it. That's Gavin. That's Gavin Gibbons' brother, Robert Gibbons, from Shropshire area, and Gavin wrote a book about UFOs over the Shrewsbury area. Fascinating guy, eccentric. That goes back to, that's Pat Delgado, that's Pat again, that's Gavin Gibbons, right, and we're sort of coming a bit adrift here, but that was going back to Colin Andrews and Eartha Kitt, the show with Eartha Kitt, when their book came out, it's Norton. Those are rare photos of Gavin and Robin. Robert Gibbons with his mum, the 1930s. That's them there. Loads of stuff. Coming of the spaceships. That's the book he did. Did anybody meet T.R. Dutton? Terence Roy Dutton? Anybody? Another fascinating guy. He had theories about why UFOs appear, and he managed to track down the strongest of likelihoods they were going to appear in certain places. That was fascinating. Sid Henley, he was from the Peterborough group, I recall, Northamptonshire that way. Again, he sadly passed away. All of their files went missing. That was some of the images from what was seen around that area. I think it was 1970s. And that was Nottinghamshire UFO Investigation Society. So, that was, again, a fascinating illustration again. Oh, sorry about that. That was Northern Ufology. That was, Sid gave me a copy of that book, of the folder, which I gave to Matt Lyons. That was withdrawn. And people speculate who that was. Well, I don't know. But can you imagine putting a book like that out, magazine like that, and then withdrawing it? Anyway, for those faint-hearted people and for the ladies, I will continue. Sorry, Shirley. That was Philip. That was Colonel Wendell Stevens that I communicated with many years ago. And that's a hell of a long story involving someone called David Daniels. That's his daughter, Cece Stevens. But yeah, Now that's the latest from the Isle of Wight. That's Kath Smith on the left, Pat Smith on the right. They're no relation. But she's holding a copy of Ufo. In those days, this is from the Isle of Wight. Again, Kath is passed on the left, but she gave me some of her files, which I'm eternally grateful for. And they've been, we wouldn't know where they are now. They're in the system, aren't they? They're all filed. That's a ufolog. That's a ufolog information. That's Len Cramp. I had conversations with Len many years ago. Cracking report of a UFO seen over. We'll show it. That's his wife. That's it. If you can have a look, you can see there are marks on the outside of the field there, which were the schoolboys saw these objects about to crash land over the field, and they told the headmaster, and Len Cramp eventually went to have a look, and fascinating report he put in about what he discovered there. Obviously no craft or anything, but yeah, it's just an interesting report. That's in there. That's one of the letters he wrote. That is from the Isle of Wight. It's a bit of a crappy illustration, but the guy that I interviewed there said that's what he saw over the Isle of Wight. Now that bloke on the right is Roger. Has anybody heard of the Flying Cross of 1967? Well, I mentioned it before. Roger Wiley and PC Clifford Waycott, I think it was the 24th of October 1967, were on duty, and they saw this formation of lights like a flying cross, and they chased it, and he reported it to his superintendent, and of course over the next few days it was downplayed. They said they were told they were chasing Mars or Venus. Clearly there wasn't. And they had the guts to come forward and say what they'd seen. But what people don't realise is that 1967 was absolutely chocker with reports of flying crosses. And for me, a flying cross is just part of the external, what would you call it, external surface of an object that doesn't always show its full self. In other words, you might see part of it, and I have no idea what the criteria is or the conditions that make this happen. For argument's sake, in Wiltshire, I've taken a photo of a cylindrical object coming, if you like, into our dimension, for want of a better word, because you only see half of it. So, you know, the stuff was full of it in 67, but the flying cross was a short-lived thing that probably by the end of the year it petered out completely. So again, for me, think of a flying cross, think of the number of reports of squares, rectangles on the exterior surface of the UFO. Think of the number of occasions when people see squares flying along, rectangulars flying along, not just saucer-shaped objects. So what causes this? I don't know. That's Graham Birdsall and Hilary Evans. Hilary Evans, well, obviously both passed away. Does anybody know where that is? You should know.
Handrift.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't pronounce it, see. But that was Scott Felton showed me that, and he showed that this is where the Berwyn Mountains, and I think he said the box has gone.
No, it's still there.
Oh, is it still there?
I drove through there about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, right, and that's where the object was seen by the nurses. Now that's somebody sent me that, and clear, as far as I know, it wasn't triangular. That's apparently is what they saw. That's another sighting. I can't even tell you where but that's the same year. I think we've seen the harbour one. That one's another one. Oh, we're back, so we go on to some. Let's go on to the next one. Well, I'll get in there slowly. Too slowly, actually. Oh right, I don't recognise that woman, do you, Shirley? Eh? Get it off. That's a lady. That's I can't remember her name. I will come. Olwyn Granger. Olwyn, 1971, Anbury, Worcestershire, with a number of other girl guides. They were keeping the night out in a field, and this bloody thing zoomed up over the top of the field and then circled around the tents for about half an hour, terrifying them all. They eventually reported to the police and then the MOD, and of course nothing was done about it. She still looks for an answer now. I think that's a letter. I don't know why this is out of sequence, but this is what Margaret Fry saw in 1955, which is of interest because we've got the classic 1, 2, 3 lights, although Margaret does say, yes, there are 3 lights set at hemispherical distance from each other, but there was actually a light in the middle. That's her before a card. That's Margaret as she was in Bexley Heath. That's the newspaper cutting. That's Shirley mentioned Alan Hilton. He had a lot of conferences down in the Kent area, ex-pilot, blah, 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 really nice guy. He passed away some years ago, and as I say, he was a big friend of Margaret's. Now that's what Rodney Maynard said he saw. He saw it the day after Margaret Fry saw hers. Now he told Timothy Good, and Timothy Good was interviewed on a radio programme about the Bexley Heath sighting in 1955. And they said to him, the guy says, well, look, Tim, what does it look like? And he said, well, it was a classic flying saucer-shaped object with what looked like a nipple on the top. And the bloke burst into laughter. And he said, well, there's a lot of those flying nipples around some of the places here. And I thought, Tim, why did you say that? And it's funny, but it's not. You know, but there again, that's what the bloke saw, and so for me, and obviously whoever was listening to that, it denigrated it, and people just laughed. That's our lady friend Margaret. That's the copper Jim streak. That's Margaret putting some makeup on. This is at the Crook Lodge, the reunion. That's the location where it happened. That's what Margaret saw, and some other kids saw as well. That's Margaret at home. What's that noise?
Rain.
Rain, I thought it was. Okay, oh Christ. It's okay, so. How are we doing for time? Are you alright?
No.
That's Margaret.
10 minutes.
Yeah, okay, well, that's Margaret visiting her father's grave. He actually was a scientist, a bit of a state. I mean, you can read it. Client source of news. I mean, I'm going to do the Broadhaven stuff. We'll crack on through that in a minute. There's some of Margaret's stuff, some of her sketches, some of the reports that she dealt with, as you can see. That's Rodney Maynard, the guy that had the sighting and then had the strange marks. Now that's the one, that's the famous one. I know if Margaret was here, and she might be here now, she'd probably say, bloody hell, John, fancy putting that up here. Because of course that was no long after she had the breast cancer. That's her with Dan Goring from Earthly. He vanished off the face of the earth about 4 years ago. Don't know where he's gone. He was living in Bexley Heath. He always said he wanted to live in Warminster. Don't know. That was seen, I think that was 78 over Bexley Heath. That's one of her letters here. She's mentioned somebody called, a police officer who witnessed it, called Deborah Denigri. I actually spoke to Deborah Denigri about 3 or 4 weeks ago and got the story from her. And that's what they saw in the sky. And that's Margaret Fry at City Television Studios, 1983. That's Scott. You all know Scott Felton, yeah? Yeah, that's him at Berwyn Mountains. He's doing a can dedication to Margaret Fry. So remember Margaret, I'm Berwyn Mountains UFO researcher. That's Jesse Rostenberg, 1956, might become 56. That's what Jesse saw, as you can see. Typical saucer-shaped object once again. That's a rare photo of Jesse, who's passed away many years ago. That's the illustration. That's what she saw. That's husband Tony. That's her again. That's Hanson farmhouse where it was seen. There's even a guy who saw it moving over about an hour later. So that certainly was interesting. That's what Jesse saw, and that's the beings inside the object. That's Jesse there, that's Jesse there. That's showing a copy of the book. But a lovely lady, and absolutely a pleasure to meet and to know. I think let's go on to the next one then. So it should be the. Right, this is the. Well, do you want to do a Ken Saunders interview with Phil Oil, or do you want to go on to the Broadhaven stuff?
Yeah, I think because of the time's getting on, should we do the Broadhaven?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll do in Wales.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Right. Well, no, there's too many of us. That's the scrapbook from the school. Right, we'll just clock on with this then. That's some of the illustrations done by the kids. And the interesting thing is that they've got bits on the back, dome on top, and on top of the dome was a light. These are young kids, as you know. And that's what they saw. And there's some of the kids there, Webb's Hill. Fascinating, because at the top of the hill there was a cemetery, and it was a bit in a derelict shape. And of course, you can't get up to the top now because it used to be a path, and cemeteries and UFOs. That's the church, the Silver Cigar. That's an illustration of what the kids saw. That's David Davis. Randall, yeah. No, that's Malcolm Robinson. I think that's Randall's, isn't it?
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah, that's it. Because Malcolm went to see him when he was a kid, and he did a really good interview. So I'll try and look that up for you.
That'll be good, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think that's Randall again. I think if I went through the lot and all the bits of film, I'd be sat here at 4 o'clock in the morning with just us two here. Everybody else would have buggered off. But so bloody much stuff. Oh, was that his letter? I think that was his letter, wasn't it? Dear Mr. Hansen, in reply to your recent letter, for which I thank you, this will confirm our meeting of October the 16th, 1998, is it, Shirley? Yeah, at some time between 10 and 11 a.m. I look forward to hearing your views and look forward to meeting you and your friend with all good wishes, Randall Jones Pugh. And the first thing he said to me is to say, when I got there, he sat down and he said, have you taken Holy Communion? I said, I beg your pardon. he said, are you religious? I said, well, to be honest, no. He said, you were a cop though, weren't you? And I said, yes. He said, well, it don't help, John. You've got to take Holy Communion. You've got to do something. You've got to change your religion because this is bloody demonic, he says. You've got to do something about it. So really, I didn't spend too much time with him. And then it started to pour down outside and his wife came and I left and I got in the car and one of the bloody bearings went in the wheel, so I had to get a lift back. But there's another story. But what a smashing bloke. Should we just do the day date? Just do the day date now. Let's get those leaves up here.
Sure of at the time was that flying saucers didn't exist. And long fascination with science fiction. However, the sort of science fiction that deals with humanity's place in the future, etc. Nothing to do with spaceships coming from Mars and invading, nothing at all like that. So, being the natural born skeptic that I was, at the end of the day, I decided that I was going to debunk this once and for all. Total nonsense. So at the end of the day, when the final bell went, I walked to the top of the playing field with fence at the perimeter of the school and crossed a small stream. Well, I'd only managed to get my leg over there when I was suddenly drawn to a large object which had appeared from behind a group of trees which are still there. About 45 feet long, silver, an expression I didn't use at the time because it wasn't in my vocabulary, but the silver finish had a pearlescent sort of feel to it. It was almost difficult to focus on, but a sort of mother of pearl effect. It had a central dome that covered the top, the middle third of the vehicle, and a red, I described it at the time as a flashing light. Now, again, another word that wasn't in my vocabulary at the same time, and I'll correct that now. I would say it was pulsating more than flashing. Rather than a flash like you'd see on an emergency vehicle, it was more sort of a very slow, perhaps one flash per second pulsation. I honestly couldn't believe what I saw, and the sighting only lasted for the matter of about 10 seconds at the very most. And the object, virtually motionless, but it appeared to be giving a slight tugging motion away from the trees. And then went behind.
Yeah.
And reports have been coming in throughout the day that they've been seeing this object, which, like I said, I didn't believe one bit. So at the end of the day, I came up from my classroom, which was kind of up there, and walked up to the perimeter fence, which is a bit higher now than it was. I only used to stand about yay high. Started looking, there was nothing in sight whatsoever. So I started to get over the fence just at the top here, and as I was about halfway over, one leg either side of the fence, you'll see, it's a bit difficult to see because these small trees around the perimeter are starting to mature a bit now, but you'll see a large clump of trees at the back there, just before you reach the top of the hill. From behind those trees,
Don't say too much more than that, does he? And this is just a couple to show you. This one.
it seems to be some sort of resistance. Now, as I turned, I know...
Has anybody met Francis Granville?
As far as I know...
Little Haven Hotel. Anybody met them? Well, her mother had the sighting at the back of the hotel in 77, I think, of the thing that blew into the roof and then landed in the back and these figures came out of it. This is perhaps you just give it a minute. This is her.
He's from Milford Haven, so he said you have a nice fish dinner in Milford Haven.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the only thing we could find was a cafe, and it was frozen fish.
Oh.
I know, but anyway, driving back anyway towards Little Haven,
Yeah.
we found a dilapidated farmhouse.
Right.
And I'm a
Basically, I mean, there's loads more to show, but you know, time, whatever.
Okay, thanks.
No, it's okay. Thanks.
Let's have a quick Q&A.
Yeah. So.
Q&A. Have you got any questions? Everybody?
They all want to bugger off and get home. But so do I.
Do you have a quick thing?
Sorry.
Well, that was a whistle-stop tour, wasn't it? It's the thing with the huge archive. We need to have one meeting like this every night for a whole year, probably, to see it all and appreciate it all. But I'm sure you all appreciate what John's told us all tonight. It's can't believe the amount of information that he could keep talking about over and over and over again. And my head's spinning actually with all that information that's gone in. And yeah, can you put your hand together again for John?
Yeah.
Nobody got any questions? Quick? No? Well, I've run out of questions because we did an interview before this tonight, which is going out on the radio show next week. And I asked a few questions then. But out of all the cases that you've examined or investigated over the years, it's a bit of a difficult question, this, which is the one that is most impressed you or has most effect on you?
What's most frightened me, of course, is the Doris from Wigmore in Herefordshire. For me, that's. I mean, at the end of the day, these people are experiencing some frightening things. Sometimes people see something in the sky and it still frightens them, and sometimes people do have a close encounter. I think that it's very difficult to say because there's so many. I mean, we've got the picture of the implant there, intriguing stuff really, and as we said, I've got a folder there. If I got the archives here and you all sat here, by the end of a month sat in here, you'd have to be carried away, or you'd be going mad because there's so much stuff. But it's trying to get that message across, isn't it? That you know, this is a serious phenomena, and it should be treated with respectability by the media and the press, and it isn't. So all you've got to do is ask you one question: why? Because they don't want you to know. Right?
Yeah, agree with that, 100%. And again, this really affected me, well, made me think. Well, the number of people who've dedicated, like you said earlier, that people have dedicated their lives to researching it. How many times tonight did he say, oh, this person's passed away, this person's passed away? We're only here for a few years, aren't we? And we do what we can, and there's a body of work left behind, and sadly a lot of it's gone missing, but John's worked hard to try and preserve a lot of that, and I think he deserved another round of applause just for that work on its own.